Palmetto High School's 2006 graduation ceremony photo album contains 1,247 photographs. 1,246 of them show happy families, smiling graduates, flying caps. One is different. Photograph number 847, taken by the school's official photographer Daniel Webb at 12:02 p.m. In the foreground, 3 female graduates descending from stage 4 joyfully raise their diplomas. In the middle ground, families stand applauding. In the background, slightly blurred but distinguishable, a girl in a red graduation gown walks toward the corridor. Jessica Morgan. But here's what's strange. On the right edge of the photograph, exactly 8 steps behind Jessica, a man in a navy suit also walks in the same direction, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the back of Jessica's neck, no expression of celebration on his face. This photograph sat on page 394 of the graduation album for 18 years, viewed thousands of times. Nobody noticed that background detail until 2024, when AI-powered facial recognition technology scanned that photograph, and the resulting report said, "Individual detected in photograph the Route 847, Vice Principal Robert Chen. Distance analysis, 2.4 meters. Walking speed analysis, synchronized with followed subject. Body language analysis, predatory following pattern, 94% probability." Nobody had seen that man following Jessica, because nobody thought to look. That day, everyone was focused on happy endings. But some stories don't end happily. In some stories, a monster hides in the background, and that monster lives in plain sight for exactly 18 years, attends graduation ceremonies, smiles in family photographs, receives Teacher of the Year awards, and nobody sees what's happening in the background of that photograph. This is the story of how a photograph kept a secret for 18 years, and how artificial intelligence finally revealed that secret. June 3, 2006, 12:02 p.m. Jessica Morgan had received her diploma. At 12:19, she was supposed to take photos with her family. At 12:17, she vanished. And what happened in those 15 minutes would change Clearwater, Florida, forever. June 3, 2006. Saturday morning. Clearwater, Florida. The Palmetto High School auditorium was filled with 2,000 people, their collective body heat fighting against the aging air conditioning system. The ceremony had begun at 10 a.m. sharp, with Principal Richard Hawthorne's opening remarks about futures and dreams and the boundless potential of the class of 2006. Jessica Marie Morgan sat in the 4th row of folding chairs, her red graduation gown smoothed carefully over her white dress beneath. She had spent 2 hours that morning perfecting her appearance, the elegant updo that pulled her blonde hair away from her face, the minimal makeup, the small pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's. At 18 years old, Jessica embodied everything that small-town Florida celebrated in its youth. She stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighed 119 pounds, had blue eyes that seemed to perpetually hold kindness, and maintained a 4.2 GPA that had earned her a full scholarship to the University of Florida's pre-med program. Linda Morgan sat in the 3rd row clutching the disposable camera she'd purchased specifically for this moment at the Walgreens on Highway 19 the previous evening. At 44 years old, she worked as a receptionist at Clearwater Medical Associates. Her eyes were already wet with tears of pride as she watched her only daughter sit among the sea of red gowns. Beside Linda, her husband Tom gripped the armrests with his calloused hands. At 47, Tom had spent 23 years in construction, working his way from apprentice to foreman. This was the first time in 8 months he'd taken a day off work. The diploma distribution began at 11:15 a.m. Principal Hawthorne read each graduate's name with practiced solemnity, shaking hands and presenting the leather-bound folders. At 11:47 a.m., his voice echoed through the auditorium speakers. Jessica Marie Morgan. The applause that followed was noticeably louder than average. Jessica wasn't just an honor roll student. She was vice president of the student council, a member of the volunteer club, and coordinator of the school's environmental project. Everyone knew her. Everyone liked her. Linda Morgan's disposable camera flash captured the exact moment when Jessica's hand closed around her diploma, her red graduation gown swirling slightly in the auditorium's air-conditioned breeze, the gold tassel on her cap catching the stage lights. The graduates threw their caps into the air and the auditorium erupted in cheers, applause, and the clicking of hundreds of cameras. Then the chaos began. 400 graduates rose from their seats simultaneously, converging toward family members. The carefully organized rows dissolved into a sea of red gowns moving in every direction. Parents surged forward with flowers and balloons. The noise level increased exponentially. Jessica Morgan exited through the main double doors at approximately 12:03 p.m. She had removed her graduation cap and carried it in her left hand along with her diploma. Her right hand held her cell phone, a silver Motorola Razr. The hallway was packed with graduates and families. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the freshly waxed linoleum floors. The air smelled of floor polish, perfume, and collective body heat. Jessica had walked this corridor thousands of times over the past 4 years. At 12:03 p.m. on graduation day, as she moved through the crowd with her diploma clutched in her hand and her phone in the other, this familiar hallway would become the last place Jessica Morgan would ever be seen alive. The security camera mounted above the west entrance captured Jessica's red-gowned figure weaving through the crowd. The timestamp read 12:03:47. Her blonde updo was still perfect. She was looking down at her phone screen, her thumbs moving in the characteristic motion of text messaging. The text she was composing was addressed to her mother. Heading out back door, be there in 2 min, so excited. Followed by a red heart emoji. The message sent at 12:04 or 03, according to cell phone records that would later become crucial evidence. Then Jessica turned right at the intersection toward Corridor B, which led toward the rear exit. Camera 7's field of view ended at that corner. Camera 4, which should have covered Corridor B, had been malfunctioning for 3 weeks. Jessica Morgan walked into a blind spot in the school's security coverage, and she never emerged. Linda Morgan received Jessica's text message at 12:04 p.m. while standing near the oak tree behind Palmetto High School, where 3 generations of Morgan family graduates had posed for celebratory photos. Hey, you've reached Jessica. I'm probably in class or studying, so leave a message and I'll call you back. Have an awesome day. Linda didn't leave a message. Jessica was probably still navigating through the crowded hallways, she reasoned. At 12:15 p.m., Linda called again. Same result. At 12:20 p.m., Tom Morgan's patience began to wear thin. I'll go find her, he announced, starting toward the school building. He entered through the rear exit at 12:23 p.m. and walked the length of Corridor B, checking bathrooms, calling Jessica's name. He checked the main hallway. No Jessica. He returned to the auditorium. No Jessica. At 12:31 p.m., Tom found Marcus Williams, the school's security officer, stationed near the front entrance. Williams, a retired Clearwater police officer, immediately adopted the calm professional demeanor. When did you last see her? Williams asked. Tom explained about the text at 12:04, saying she was on her way. Williams radioed his colleague, Jennifer Martinez. By 12:45 p.m., both security officers had conducted thorough searches. Nobody had seen her. At 12:51 p.m., Marcus Williams called the Clearwater Police Department and reported a missing person. Officer David Rodriguez arrived at 1:07 p.m. Rodriguez, 34 years old with 8 years on the Clearwater PD, had handled dozens of missing person reports. This felt different. He interviewed Tom and Linda Morgan in the school's main office. Linda's hands shook as she showed Rodriguez the text messages on her phone. Had Jessica been acting unusual lately? Rodriguez asked. Tom's jaw tightened. My daughter is not a runaway, officer. She was excited about today. She has a full scholarship to UF. Something happened to her. Mitchell had worked dozens of missing person cases, most of which resolved within the first 24 hours. But certain details immediately raised red flags. The brief window of time, the high traffic location, the cell phone that continued to ring but never answered. Mitchell ordered a comprehensive search with K9 units borrowed from Pinellas County. The dogs tracked Jessica's scent from the auditorium through the main hallway, exactly as the security camera had shown. They followed the scent to the corner where Jessica had turned right onto Corridor B. And then, approximately 50 feet down Corridor B, the dogs stopped at a door marked Boiler Room, authorized personnel only, keep locked. The door was locked. It had been locked for years, according to Principal Hawthorne. Since the school converted from coal boiler to natural gas heating in 1998, only the maintenance supervisor and assistant principals had keys. Detective Mitchell requested that the door be opened. The room behind that door was filled with defunct equipment, old furniture, and thick dust. The interview concluded with Chen providing permission for voluntary searches. Both revealed nothing of interest. By 2 a.m. on June 4th, the search had expanded to include neighboring communities. Linda and Tom Morgan remained at the school, unable to go home. At 3:17 a.m., Tom suffered an anxiety-induced cardiac episode. Paramedics transported him to Clearwater Medical Center. Detective Mitchell remained at the command center, reviewing footage for the 100th time. Camera 7 showed Jessica turning onto Corridor B at 12:03:47. Camera 4, which should have captured her, had been malfunctioning for 3 weeks. Mitchell pulled maintenance reports. The malfunction had been reported on May 15th by Marcus Williams. Repair scheduled for June 12th. The email chain showed copies sent to Kevin Patterson in IT, Principal Hawthorne, Vice Principal Chen, and the district's facilities coordinator. Vice Principal Chen had known Camera 4 wasn't functioning. He had known about the blind spot. He had keys to the boiler room where Jessica's phone was found. But knowledge and access didn't equal guilt. Chen was a respected educator with 22 years of service, glowing reviews, no history of inappropriate conduct. Still, something nagged at Mitchell's instincts. She pulled Chen's personnel file. Everything painted a picture of a dedicated, effective administrator. Then she found something that made her pause. A note from 2003 regarding a parent complaint that had been investigated and deemed unfounded. A mother had reported feeling uncomfortable with how Chen had spoken to her daughter, suggesting his questions had been too personal. The investigation had cleared Chen. The student provided a statement saying Chen had been professional. The complaint was marked as resolved, but Mitchell made a note to follow up. As dawn broke on June 4, 2006, Jessica Morgan had been missing for 17 hours. Yet investigators were no closer to understanding what happened. The Morgan house on Pelican Drive became a shrine to absence in the weeks following June 3rd. Jessica's bedroom remained exactly as she'd left it that graduation morning. Linda found herself drawn to that room multiple times each day, sitting on Jessica's bed, holding the stuffed elephant Jessica had slept with until she was 12. The college acceptance letter from University of Florida remained pinned to the bulletin board. Tom threw himself into action because stillness meant thinking. He spent 16 hours a day searching, driving through neighboring communities, checking abandoned buildings. He printed 5,000 missing person flyers at his own expense. The flyers showed Jessica's senior portrait above bold text. Missing, Jessica Morgan. Last seen June 3, 2006, Palmetto High School. The $10,000 represented every dollar in the Morgan family's savings account. The reward generated hundreds of calls. Most led nowhere. Each false lead carved away another piece of Linda's hope. By the end of June, she'd taken indefinite leave from her receptionist job. Her weight dropped 12 pounds in 3 weeks. Her hands developed a permanent tremor. The media attention began to fade by mid-June. Local news stations moved on to other stories. Jessica's story became periodic updates rather than breaking news. The Morgan family found themselves navigating a new social landscape. Some friends rallied around them. Emma Rodriguez's family organized continuing search parties every weekend. The Methodist Church held weekly prayer vigils. But other people began creating distance. Former friends stopped calling. Neighbors who'd once been friendly now offered awkward waves before hurrying inside. Tom and Linda's marriage began showing stress fractures. They grieved differently. They stopped having conversations that weren't about the investigation. The silence in their house became oppressive. By July 2006, Detective Mitchell had conducted over 300 interviews, followed up on more than 800 tips, and coordinated searches covering approximately 200 square miles. Yet they were no closer to understanding what had happened. The DNA analysis of the boiler room yielded no useful evidence. The dust showed multiple footprints, but all matched school personnel. The phone contained no fingerprints other than Jessica's. Cell tower data confirmed the phone remained where it was found from 12:05 p.m. until battery death at 3:47 a.m. She returned repeatedly to Chen's interview, trying to identify what had triggered her instincts. Chen continued working at Palmetto High School through summer and into the following academic year. He maintained his reputation as a dedicated educator, organizing orientation for new students, coordinating professional development for teachers. Nobody suspected him. He was Vice Principal Chen, the administrator who'd worked at Palmetto for 22 years. He'd expressed appropriate concern about Jessica's disappearance, cooperated fully with investigation, even attended a memorial service that Emma Rodriguez organized at the 1-month anniversary. Chen stood in that service, surrounded by grieving students and devastated family, and spoke eloquently about Jessica's dedication and her bright future that had been stolen. He quoted poetry about young lives cut short. He offered comfort to Linda Morgan, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder while she sobbed. And nobody knew, nobody suspected. The first anniversary arrived with cruel Florida sunshine. June 3, 2007. Linda organized a memorial gathering at the oak tree. Emma came, along with several former classmates. Some teachers attended. Principal Hawthorne, who'd retired, drove back from Venice. Vice Principal Chen, now promoted to principal after Hawthorne's retirement, attended as well. He'd brought flowers, white lilies. He stood respectfully at the edge of the gathering. Tom Morgan didn't attend. He'd stopped attending memorial services after the 6-month mark, unable to participate in rituals that felt like admitting Jessica was dead. The second anniversary came, then the third, the fourth, the fifth. With each passing year, fewer people attended. Emma moved away for college, though she returned each June 3rd for the first 5 years. Other classmates graduated, started careers, got married, had children. Life moved forward for everyone except the Morgan family. Frozen in perpetual June 3, 2006. Detective Mitchell retired in 2015 after 24 years. Her replacement, Detective James Torres, inherited the cold case file. Torres reviewed the file periodically, but cold cases from 2006 had to compete with new investigations and limited resources. Jessica Morgan became a name in a file, a sad story that older officers mentioned occasionally. Linda developed obsessive rituals. She refused to remove any of Jessica's belongings. She celebrated Jessica's birthday each year with a cake alone. She kept Jessica's cell phone number active, convinced that somehow, someday, Jessica might call. Tom Morgan died in March 2019 at age 60. The death certificate listed cardiac arrest. But Linda knew the truth. Tom had died of 13 years of grief. His final words were, "I'm sorry I couldn't find her." The funeral was small. Emma Rodriguez, now Dr. Rodriguez with a psychology practice in Tampa, attended. Vice Principal Chen, now serving as principal for his 13th year, sent flowers and a card. Linda returned to the empty house alone. 14 years, 17 years, 18 years. The world continued forward, indifferent to the Morgan family's frozen grief. Photograph Thumberger 847 on page 394 of the class of 2006 graduation album waited for technology that didn't exist in 2006 to finally reveal the truth. Detective James Torres inherited the Jessica Morgan cold case file on his third day with Clearwater PD's Major Crimes Division. The file occupied 2 banker's boxes containing thousands of pages of documentation. Torres, 38 years old with 12 years of experience in Miami-Dade, approached cold cases with methodical skepticism. Most cold cases remained cold for good reason, but something about Jessica's case captured his attention. The narrow timeline, the high-traffic location, the strategic knowledge required. Torres spent his first month reviewing every document, creating a digital database. He constructed new timeline charts, mapped every witness statement. One detail kept nagging. Vice Principal Chen's interview from June 3, 2006. Detective Mitchell's handwritten notes included a small asterisk next to Chen's name with a note. Something feels off. Can't articulate what. Revisit if other leads develop. Torres reviewed Chen's background extensively. 22 years at Palmetto as of 2006, promoted to principal in 2007, still serving in 2024. He'd received numerous awards. Teacher of the Year in 2001, Administrator of Excellence in 2008 and 2015, Outstanding Educator Award in 2018. Chen had organized safety improvements, including a complete overhaul of the security camera system in 2010. He'd established mentorship programs. He'd raised thousands for scholarships. Parents praised him. Students respected him. Nothing suggested capability for violence. No complaints beyond that single resolved issue from 2003. No criminal record. No concerning patterns. He'd been married for 31 years to Margaret Chen, a middle school teacher. They had 2 adult children who'd both become educators. Yet Mitchell's instinct bothered Torres. He requested permission to re-interview Chen in January 2024. The interview lasted 45 minutes. and yielded nothing overtly suspicious. Chen, now 71 and planning retirement, remained calm and professional. He remembered the day clearly. "Do you ever think about what might have happened to her?" Torres asked. "All the time," Chen replied without hesitation. "I've been in education for 42 years, detective. You develop relationships with students. Jessica was special. Her disappearance haunts everyone who knew her." The response was pitch perfect. Torres noted no obvious deception indicators. Still, something lingered. Torres expanded his investigation to include other staff from 2006 who remained in 2024. The list was short. He interviewed all 5. Their responses were uniformly positive about Chen. Nobody had concerning stories. He was exactly what he appeared to be. Torres felt his investigation hitting the same wall. Without new evidence, without witnesses, without forensic breakthroughs, the case would remain exactly what it had been. Then, in March 2024, the breakthrough came from artificial intelligence technology. The Clearwater Police Department had contracted with Clearview Forensics in early 2024 to assist with cold case investigations through AI-powered analysis. The system employed machine learning algorithms to analyze photographic evidence in ways impossible for human investigators. It could detect micro-expressions, measure pupil dilation, analyze body positioning and proxemics, identify unusual relationships. Most importantly, it could analyze background details that human observers overlooked. Position, 2.4 meters behind subject A. Direction, identical to subject A. Velocity, 1.2 meters per second, synchronized. Body language analysis, concerning. Torres leaned closer, reading the detailed behavioral analysis. Subject B demonstrates multiple indicators inconsistent with celebratory context. 1. Facial expression analysis. Absence of smile despite celebratory environment. Focused intensity, confidence, 91%. 2. Gaze direction, fixed on subject A's head duct neck area, no environmental scanning. Predatory focus pattern, 94% confidence. Torres stared at the photograph for several long minutes, seeing what thousands had looked at without seeing for 18 years. The AI had identified what Mitchell's instincts sensed but couldn't articulate. But AI analysis wasn't sufficient evidence for arrest. Torres needed more. He returned to case files, now specifically searching for details connecting Chen to Jessica beyond normal administrator-student relationship. He reviewed Chen's 2006 interview again. "She walked past me in the main hallway, probably around 12:03 or so. I remember because she was texting and nearly bumped into another graduate. But the photograph showed Chen following Jessica at 12:02, not standing stationary." Chen had lied. A small lie, probably one he thought was unverifiable, but a lie nonetheless. Torres pulled additional photographs, searching for other images showing Chen and Jessica in proximity. He found 3 more. Photograph number 832, 11:58 a.m. Chen standing near stage exit during ceremony's conclusion. His position gave him clear view of Jessica receiving diploma. Photograph number 901, 12:04 p.m. Chen visible in background, face turned toward corridor B where Jessica had gone. Photograph number 10:15, 12:11 p.m. Chen speaking with security officer Marcus Williams. Torres created a timeline. 11:47 a.m. Jessica receives diploma. 11:58 a.m. ceremony concludes. 12:02 p.m. Chen following Jessica in photograph 847. 12:03:47 a.m. Jessica turns onto corridor B. 12:04:03 a.m. Jessica's text sends. 12:05 a.m. estimated phone placement in boiler room. 12:11 a.m. Chen photographed with security officer. 12:23 a.m. Tom Morgan reports Jessica missing. The timeline was tight but feasible. If Chen followed Jessica onto corridor B, confronted her near the boiler room, forced her inside, concealed her while placing her phone on the filing cabinet, all could have occurred between 12:04 and 12:11. But where was Jessica's body? The boiler room had been searched extensively. Torres pulled architectural plans for Palmetto High School, specifically the old boiler room section. The building was constructed in 1961, with additions in 1975, 1988, and 2002. The boiler room dated to original construction. The plans showed something that hadn't been obvious in 2006. The boiler room connected to a larger network of maintenance tunnels and crawl spaces throughout the building's original section. Most had been sealed when the heating system was modernized, but drawings showed access points that might still be reachable for someone who knew the building intimately. Someone like Chen, who'd worked there for 22 years, who'd overseen maintenance projects, who'd had master keys. Torres knew he needed to return to Palmetto High School, not for another interview, but for comprehensive search of sealed spaces that hadn't been examined in 2006 because nobody knew they were accessible. The search warrant, approved by Judge Patricia Martinez on March 20, 2024, authorized extensive examination of all crawl spaces and sealed areas connected to the old boiler room. The search team arrived at 6 a.m. on March 22, 2024. Principal Chen met them, his expression showing professional cooperation, though Torres noticed his hands shaking as he unlocked doors. The search began in the boiler room. Forensic team members with thermal imaging cameras, ground-penetrating radar, and K9 units systematically examined every surface. At 9:47 a.m., K9 officer Rebecca Chen's German Shepherd Max began alerting at a wall section that appeared solid but showed irregular seams. Thermal imaging confirmed anomalous readings behind that wall, a void space approximately 4 feet wide. Torres watched as the team carefully removed cinder blocks that had been stacked and mortared to seal an opening. The mortar appeared newer than surrounding wall, applied sometime after original construction, possibly when heating system was modernized in 1998. Behind those cinder blocks lay a crawl space approximately 20 feet long and 4 feet high, filled with old pipes, insulation, and decades of dust. And at the far end, partially covered by deteriorated insulation, lay skeletal remains consistent with a young adult female, wearing degraded remnants of what had once been a white dress. Jessica Morgan had been in the building all along, exactly where her cell phone signal suggested, concealed in a space that 2006 investigators hadn't known existed, sealed off specifically to prevent discovery. The discovery transformed the investigation from cold case to active homicide. DNA analysis confirmed identity within 72 hours. Dr. Michael Torres, the forensic anthropologist, provided a preliminary report. The skeletal evidence showed trauma to the hyoid bone, a small horseshoe-shaped bone in the neck often fractured in manual strangulation cases. The position suggested Jessica had been placed shortly after death, before rigor mortis would have made positioning difficult. The cinder blocks had been analyzed for fingerprints, but decades of humidity degraded any prints. However, mortar composition could be dated. Laboratory analysis indicated application sometime between 1998 and 2006, consistent with heating system modernization. Torres pulled maintenance records. Chen had overseen the 1998 modernization project, coordinating between district contractors and staff. He would have had complete knowledge of which spaces were being sealed, which remained accessible, where someone might conceal something. The mortar evidence combined with Chen's oversight of renovations, the AI analysis of photograph 3847, his false statement, his unique access and knowledge, finally provided sufficient probable cause for arrest. The arrest occurred March 28, 2024, at 6:47 a.m. at Chen's residence on Mockingbird Lane. Detective Torres, accompanied by 6 officers, approached the front door as sunrise illuminated the carefully maintained landscaping. Chen answered in a bathrobe, his expression shifting from confusion to resignation. Torres identified himself and began reading Miranda rights. Robert Chen, you are under arrest for the murder of Jessica Marie Morgan. You have the right to remain silent. Margaret Chen appeared behind her husband. There must be some mistake, she kept repeating. Robert would never. This is impossible. But Chen said nothing. He simply nodded when Torres asked if he understood his rights, held out his hands for handcuffs, and walked calmly to the police vehicle. His expression showed neither surprise nor denial, just quiet acceptance, as if he'd been expecting this moment for 18 years. The booking process revealed a man who seemed to have aged a decade overnight. Chen, 71 years old, looked every day of it as officers took his photograph, fingerprints, and personal effects. He declined to make any statements without an attorney. His body language spoke volumes. Shoulders slumped, hands trembling, eyes distant. The news of Chen's arrest exploded across Clearwater. Local media interrupted regular programming. Social media erupted with shock, disbelief, and anger. The reaction from Palmetto High School revealed the deep betrayal that comes when someone trusted with protecting children is revealed as their predator. Teachers who'd worked with Chen for years struggled to reconcile the professional administrator they knew. with the monster who'd strangled a graduate. Students whose guidance sessions Chen had supervised felt violated. Emma Rodriguez received the call from Detective Torres. She sat in stunned silence processing the news that Jessica's killer had been in plain sight all along, had attended memorial services, had spoken at the one-year anniversary, had continued working surrounded by other potential victims. Was Jessica the only one? Emma finally asked, her voice shaking. Torres couldn't answer with certainty. The investigation would now expand to review Chen's entire 42-year career. Linda Morgan learned about the arrest from Torres's phone call. Linda was 62 now, had been living alone since Tom's death in 2019, had spent 18 years not knowing what happened to her daughter. The news brought complicated mixture of relief, grief, and rage. "I want to see him," Linda told Torres. "I need to look him in the eye and ask him why." But there would be no such meeting. Chen's attorney, Michael Harrison, established strict protocols about his client having no contact with the victim's family. Any confrontation would have to wait for trial, if Chen didn't accept a plea agreement. The preliminary hearing, scheduled for April 15, 2024, would determine whether sufficient evidence existed to proceed. Prosecutor Amanda Walsh prepared her case. The AI photograph analysis, his false statements, his access and knowledge, his oversight of renovations, and most damning, the discovery of Jessica's remains in a location only someone with Chen's knowledge could have accessed. Chen's defense team faced the challenge of explaining away evidence that seemed overwhelming. Harrison prepared arguments about AI analysis reliability in criminal proceedings, the circumstantial nature of evidence, the lack of direct forensic evidence. But everyone involved knew this case would likely never reach trial. The evidence was sufficient, and Chen was 71, facing mandatory life imprisonment if convicted. The incentive for accepting a plea agreement was substantial. The confession came April 8, 2024, 7 days before the preliminary hearing. Chen, after extensive consultations with Harrison, agreed to provide full account in exchange for a plea agreement that would spare him trial and death penalty consideration. The interview occurred in a small room at Pinellas County Jail. Present were Detective Torres, Prosecutor Walsh, Chen's attorney Harrison, and a stenographer. Chen, wearing orange jail jumpsuit that emphasized how much weight he'd lost, began speaking in quiet, steady voice. "I need you to understand that I never planned to hurt anyone." Chen began, his hands folded on the table. "I'm not making excuses. I'm not asking for sympathy. But I need you to understand that what happened wasn't premeditated murder. It was a series of terrible decisions that spiraled out of control in minutes." He explained he'd noticed Jessica during her sophomore year, 2003, when she'd joined the environmental club he sponsored. His interest had begun innocently, the pride an educator feels in a promising student. But sometime during junior year, his interest transformed into something he recognized as inappropriate, but couldn't control. He found himself creating excuses to interact with Jessica, offering extra tutoring she didn't need, discussing her college applications in more detail than necessary. He insisted he'd never acted on these feelings during her time as a student. But on graduation day, something shifted. Seeing Jessica receive her diploma, knowing she'd be leaving for college, realizing this was his final opportunity, Chen made a decision that would destroy multiple lives. "I saw her walking toward the back corridor," Chen said, his voice flat. "I followed her. I told myself I just wanted to congratulate her one more time. But I think I knew even then that I was going to do more than talk." Jessica had been surprised but not alarmed when Chen approached her in Corridor B. Why would she be? He was Vice Principal Chen, the administrator who'd helped with college applications, who'd written recommendation letters, who'd been nothing but supportive. Chen told her he wanted to show her something in the old boiler room. A time capsule that graduates from the 1960s had supposedly hidden. Jessica, trusting and curious, followed him. Why wouldn't she? Adults lie to children about innocent things constantly. Once inside the boiler room with the door closed and security cameras unable to capture what happened, Chen made his advance, attempting to kiss Jessica, declaring feelings he described as overwhelming and impossible to control. Jessica's reaction was immediate rejection and horror. She demanded he let her leave. She threatened to report him. She pulled out her cell phone. "I panicked," Chen said, his voice finally showing emotion. I grabbed her phone, threw it aside. She tried to scream. I put my hands on her throat to silence her. I didn't mean to kill her. I just needed her to stop screaming, to give me a chance to explain. But human throats are fragile things. When I finally released my grip, Jessica collapsed. I attempted CPR, but she wasn't breathing, had no pulse, was already gone. The rest detailed the panic-driven cover-up. Chen placed Jessica's body temporarily behind the old boiler while he figured out what to do. He took her phone and placed it on the filing cabinet, knowing cell tower signal would continue showing her in the school building, buying him time. He knew about the crawl space behind the false wall, had supervised the sealing of that space during 1998 renovations, but had deliberately left one section incompletely sealed. Over following weeks, as investigation intensified, Chen gradually sealed the crawl space completely, bringing in small amounts of materials over time so nobody would notice. I told myself that what happened was an accident, Chen concluded, that I hadn't intended to kill her, that I was protecting myself from false accusations. I convinced myself that Jessica's death was the result of her overreaction. I spent 18 years building a narrative where I was the victim of circumstances rather than the perpetrator of a crime. The room was silent. Then Prosecutor Walsh asked the question everyone wanted answered. Were there others? Was Jessica the only victim? Chen's hesitation was telling. Jessica was the only one I killed, but was she the only one I had inappropriate feelings for? No, there were others. Students I watched too closely, found excuses to spend time near. But I never acted on those feelings before June 3, 2006. And I never acted on them after, because Jessica's death terrified me into control I should have exercised all along. The confession, recorded over 3 hours and 47 minutes, provided the closure that Jessica's family had sought for 18 years. But closure doesn't heal wounds, it just stops the bleeding and allows scars to form. The plea agreement, formally entered April 22, 2024, spared Chen from trial, but not from consequences. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, in exchange for life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Judge Patricia Martinez addressed Chen directly. You were entrusted with one of society's most sacred responsibilities. You violated that trust in the most horrific way imaginable. The sentence is appropriate, but it can never restore what you've taken. Linda Morgan, attending with Emma beside her, read a victim impact statement that brought silence to the courtroom. Robert Chen, you stole my daughter's future. You stole her chance to attend college, become a doctor, get married, have children. You stole 18 years where I wondered every day if she was suffering. You stole my husband's final years, because searching for Jessica killed Tom as surely as you killed her. I don't forgive you. I will never forgive you. I hope that every day in prison, you remember what you took from this world. The impact of Chen's arrest rippled through Clearwater's educational community. Pinellas County School District launched comprehensive investigation into Chen's 42-year career, reviewing files, interviewing former students and colleagues, searching for red flags. The investigation revealed uncomfortable truths about institutional failures. The 2003 parent complaint took on new significance. The investigator had conducted only perfunctory interviews and accepted Chen's explanation without examining whether a pattern existed. The review identified 3 other incidents from 1997, 2008, and 2015 where students or parents expressed vague discomfort about interactions with Chen. Nothing specific enough to trigger formal complaints, just feelings that something was off. Each had been handled informally, chalked up to overprotective parents or personality conflicts. In hindsight, those incidents formed a pattern that should have warranted scrutiny. But pattern recognition requires someone looking for patterns, and nobody had been looking. Palmetto High School underwent significant changes. The principal who replaced Chen brought in trauma counselors. The school board mandated comprehensive background check revisions, including psychological evaluations. The old boiler room was sealed permanently, with the entire mechanical system redesigned. The school commissioned a memorial garden near the oak tree where the Morgans had planned to take graduation photos. Emma Rodriguez struggled with complicated grief. I spent 18 years wondering if Jessica was out there somewhere, suffering, she explained in an interview with Tampa Bay Times. Part of me is grateful to finally know what happened. But another part of me is angry, at Chen obviously, but also at myself for never suspecting, at the system that allowed him to continue working. The photograph, number 847 from the graduation album, became a powerful symbol of how predators hide in plain sight. The AI technology became a tool that other law enforcement agencies began adopting for cold case investigations. Linda Morgan faced the complex task of finally burying her daughter 18 years after Jessica's disappearance. The funeral, held May 15, 2024, drew hundreds of attendees. Jessica's remains were interred next to Tom's grave, finally reuniting the family. Linda stood at the graveside, supported by friends, and read from a letter she'd written years earlier. "Dear Jessica, I never stopped looking for you. I never stopped hoping. I never stopped loving you. Now you can finally rest, and maybe eventually I can too. Your father is waiting for you. Tell him I'll join you both someday, but not quite yet. I still have work to do here." The Jessica Morgan Memorial Scholarship, established with community contributions, would provide annual college scholarships to graduates who embodied the qualities Jessica represented. It was small compensation for immeasurable loss, a way of ensuring that Jessica's potential, though stolen, would be honored through supporting other students' futures. Chen's sentencing to life imprisonment meant he would likely die behind bars. Florida Department of Corrections placed him in a facility with large population of inmates convicted of crimes against children, where his status would make imprisonment significantly more difficult. But for Linda and the Clearwater community, no amount of suffering Chen experienced could balance the scales. Justice isn't about equivalence or revenge. It's about acknowledgement, forcing perpetrators to admit what they've done, ensuring crimes are documented and remembered, preventing them from harming others. The case became a teaching tool for law enforcement agencies nationwide, demonstrating how technology could eventually solve even the most carefully concealed crimes. But it also served as a sobering reminder that technology alone isn't enough. Without Torres's persistent focus, without Mitchell's earlier instinct, without Linda's refusal to let Jessica be forgotten, the photograph might have sat in that album indefinitely. 18 years. That's how long Chen successfully maintained his facade. How long Jessica's family waited for answers. How long Clearwater carried the weight of an unsolved mystery. The resolution brought relief, but not healing. Some wounds are too deep for complete recovery. But at least now, finally, everyone knew what happened in those 13 minutes when Jessica Morgan walked into a camera blind spot on June 3, 2006. The truth, terrible as it was, freed Jessica's family from the purgatory of not knowing, and perhaps that's the best definition of justice available. Not revenge, not restoration, but simply truth. Palmetto High School's 2006 graduation album remains in the school's library archives. Photograph number 847 is now marked with a small notation in the digital catalog. Historical evidence in the Jessica Morgan case, solved 2024. That photograph, viewed thousands of times without revealing its secret until AI technology finally saw what human eyes overlooked, serves as powerful reminder about the nature of evil. Monsters don't always look monstrous. They wear suits and smiles. They hold positions of authority and trust. They attend memorial services for their victims. They hide in plain sight, captured in the background of photographs that everyone looks at without seeing. Linda Morgan, now 62, continues living in the house on Pelican Drive. She's finally removed some of Jessica's belongings, donated her books, gave her clothes to charity, converted the space gradually into something that honors memory, without remaining trapped by it. But Jessica's college acceptance letter still hangs in Linda's home office. The love that had prompted Linda to order that graduation cake, to plan celebration beneath oak tree, to believe in her daughter's bright future, that love remained, transformed by grief, but never diminished. Emma Rodriguez, Dr. Emma Rodriguez now, visits Linda regularly. They've formed a bond that transcends shared trauma. Emma's psychology practice specializes in helping families of violent crime victims, work she credits to her own experience. People assume that solving a cold case brings closure, Emma explained in a presentation to law enforcement professionals. But closure is a myth. What resolution actually brings is permission to stop searching, to stop holding your breath, to finally grieve fully. That's different from closure. That's just freedom from purgatory. Detective Torres received commendations for solving the case, but he's quick to credit contributions of many. Mitchell's instincts from 18 years earlier, the AI technology developers, and most importantly, Linda Morgan's refusal to let Jessica be forgotten. Cold cases are solved by persistence, Torres told reporters. Not genius, not luck, but simply refusing to give up, continuing to review evidence, being willing to apply new tools to old information. Every year gives us better technology for analyzing evidence that's been sitting in boxes. Jessica's case won't be the last that AI helps solve. Chen, serving his life sentence at Gulf Correctional Institution, declined all interview requests. His only communication came through his attorney, a brief statement acknowledging his crime and expressing remorse that felt performative to those who read it. Chen died in prison 7 years later in 2031 from complications of pneumonia. He was 78. His death generated minimal media coverage. He'd become what he deserved to be, forgotten, a cautionary tale rather than a person worthy of attention. But Jessica Morgan, she was remembered. The scholarship bearing her name supported hundreds of students. The memorial garden became a quiet space for reflection. Her senior portrait hung in that memorial space, along with a plaque describing her achievements and character. The story of her disappearance became a case study in criminal justice courses, forensic science programs, law enforcement training. Photograph 847 was analyzed in classes teaching about how perpetrators hide and how technology can reveal invisible truths. Beyond academic legacy, Jessica lived in memory in Linda's quiet moments, remembering her daughter's laugh in Emma's work, helping other families and hundreds of students who received scholarships bearing Jessica's name, and learned about the young woman whose potential inspired their opportunities. 18 years of mystery, solved by a photograph that everyone had seen but nobody truly looked at. A reminder that sometimes the answer is visible all along, waiting for the right perspective, the right technology, the right person willing to look closely enough to see what's hiding in the background. Evil succeeded for 18 years not because it was sophisticated or clever, but because it understood human nature. People see what they expect to see. They trust institutions and authority figures. They overlook background details when focusing on foreground celebrations. But technology doesn't have those blind spots. AI doesn't trust based on job titles or reputations. It simply analyzes patterns, identifies anomalies, and flags concerns that human observers miss. The graduation ceremony photograph from June 3, 2006, captured the moment when Jessica's bright future transformed into a family's nightmare. It also, unknowingly, captured the evidence that would eventually bring her killer to justice. Both truths existed simultaneously in that frozen moment: celebration and tragedy, joy and horror, life and death. Everyone who looked at that photograph for 18 years saw only the celebration. It took artificial intelligence to finally see the tragedy lurking 8 steps behind.